Notre Dame's loss to Miami was incredibly frustrating in the moment, but there were some positive things to take away, and the Irish can still accomplish everything they set out to achieve. Today, we are unpacking everything we liked about Notre Dame's performance, everything we didn't like, and what it all means going forward. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish for the past 5 seasons. Today is Wednesday, September 3rd, and as always, thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you have not already, please take a moment to subscribe on YouTube or follow along wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It has been a jam-packed week here on the show. After the opener, I dropped a full instant reaction episode on Sunday night, followed by another episode Tuesday morning to dig into all the different reactions from the fan base and the media following Notre Dame's loss to Miami. Today's episode is going to be a little different. I'm going to be joined by my good friend and former co-host Luke Smith for our final thoughts segment. This is something we have done after every game since 2020, and I realize we have a lot of new members in the audience, which is great. We are so happy to have you. Just make sure you subscribe. Luke and I used to host a podcast together called Sons of Saturday, and we always try to have some fun with these as we wrap up the game and share what stood out. Luke was in the building for Notre Dame's loss to Miami, as he is for practically every single game the Irish play. So we'll start off with his boots on the ground report. Then we'll each share the 3 things we liked, 3 things we didn't like, and close with a quick look ahead to Texas A&M. Let's bring in Luke. All right, Luke Smith is back with me here, and it looks like he has dried off after being in Miami for the weekend. So let's start there with the first boots on the ground report of the 2025 season. Take us through the scene in and around Hard Rock Stadium on Sunday night.
I got to be honest, I'm pretty disappointed in myself. I think I let the joy of the Orange Bowl and even really the aftermath of the Orange Bowl, which I kind of forgot how much of a pain it was getting out of that place, cloud my judgment on how much of a dump that stadium is and just how it makes Soldier Field look like the most accessible place on earth. I'm pretty disappointed in myself. 2017 me is probably furious with 2025 me. And I actually found my tweet from November 12th, 2017, after the last time Notre Dame played Miami Hurricanes in that stadium. So 1:39 a.m. And all it said was, "Tonight sucked," all caps. I am never coming back to Miami. I broke that this past January. Felt great, but like this time, man, it just didn't work out. And I gotta say, like the environment itself, not super impressive. It was nothing like 2017. There's both some pluses and minuses to that. I didn't think their fans were like that loud or engaged, to be honest. And there were definitely some empty pockets in the stadium, despite the fact that it was a sellout. Meanwhile, in 2017, like I feared for my life in that stadium. And this time the fans really weren't that hostile. Like I maybe saw 2 people that were like kind of talking a little bit to Notre Dame fans, but there was nothing nothing worse than even NC State a few years ago. I thought it was pretty hospitable. So I guess shout out to the Miami fans for that, for finally growing up a little bit. But then getting out of that stadium, leaving my friends, obviously pretty upset. I sat in the stands for a little bit because I was like, oh, this will help me. And by the way, it takes like an hour to get to the section anyways. I then tried to find an Uber and it's impossible. My hotel was 20 minutes away and I'm just walking aimlessly down this endless sidewalk in the world's worst parking lot. You got to go like over a ramp, through a bridge. I wasn't really sweating during the game, but because I'm swallowed by humanity, my shirt's just like dripping sweat. And finally, like I've been walking for 45 minutes. I'm pretty much out of Hard Rock. Like I'm on a random street. I'm like, this could be a dodgy area. I don't really know where I am. And some guy's just saying car service. And I'm like, how much? He says, $120. Well, yes, where I was going. I showed him 20 minutes away. He's like, 120. I have no idea if he's legit. I'm like, that'll work. And he was safe. He was a great guy. We really kind of bonded for the 20-minute ride over how bad of a setup that stadium is. And he got me back to the hotel. And then I woke up short 3 hours later to fly back to Chicago. So that said, will not return to Hard Rock Stadium unless it's a national championship game, maybe a semifinal game, but probably unless it's a national championship game.
So outside of watching a loss, being stuck in Miami in the humidity, walking aimlessly through a parking lot, and basically breaking every stranger danger rule that one could possibly break. Other than that, pretty good weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it was outstanding. 20 hours in Miami that I will never get back.
I actually have heard that the Miami fans were a lot more hospitable and much kinder to Notre Dame fans, although to your point, there were less people there. I mean, I don't know if the game ended up selling out on Friday. It had not sold out.
I think it did. It sold out on Saturday, technically. But
it kind of makes sense with it being the holiday weekend, the weather being as miserable as it was. Like, how much do you think the weather actually impacted the game? Because on TV, it was hard to tell, when they have like the broadcast camera angle, you don't even notice it's raining, even in a complete downpour. And then they'll show one in like the ISO cam, and you're like, oh my God, how can they even see out there? Now, it was never like that at any point during the game on TV, at least as I saw it. But do you think it had a big impact?
I got to be honest, it's really hard for me to gauge that because in the lead up to the game, like obviously it's pouring rain at different points and it's a monsoon in that parking lot. It definitely flooded a little bit, but the Notre Dame section was way up in one of the end zones in like 335, and that part is covered. So I was dry the whole game. And there were definitely points in that game where I'm like, I really can't see from up here. And yeah, I know I have glasses on right now, but like I had my contacts in, and they're like the Malachi Fields fumble, for example. When I saw that live, I'm like, oh, no way, he's got to be down. And then I see the Jumbotron. I'm like, what am I seeing from up here? Like, I can't see anything. So I felt fine, obviously, because I was dry, but it was hard for me to tell, like, because then when they would show on the Jumbotron, it looks like it's pouring, but I'm not getting wet at all. So it's a little disorienting, honestly.
Yeah, I could get that. And I don't understand why they didn't make that place a dome. I understand that
or why they played a game there the day before.
Yeah, it's a big topic of conversation. But look, Notre Dame falls 27-24. It seems like there's so many different reactions from this game. We've already sifted through some of them, but I think the more that I sit on this game, it's weird how not upset I am. And I feel like when you watch the game back and you see how it played out, it was not nearly as bad for Notre Dame than it felt in the moment. Like, do you get that same sense? Because I think there actually were a lot of good things for Notre Dame to take away from this, and I guess it's a good way to segue into the three things we liked.
There's definitely a lot of good things to take away from it. I agree with you. I felt like in the moment, it felt like it was teetering for a while. Like, oh boy, this might get really bad. And thankfully,
it almost got ugly.
Yeah,
like when Notre Dame went 3-and-out after they went down 21-7, I was like, uh-oh.
And thank God Mario Cristobal is their head coach, and that's really the only reason Notre Dame had a chance, along with the fight that they showed a little bit. But I think the other reason is, like, obviously, I don't want to spend every episode talking about the playoff, but this loss not necessarily being a season-defining loss because there is still a path to have a postseason, which is just strange to me. It also probably lessens the blow a little bit. But on the topic of good things, I think there was a lot put on CJ Carr's shoulders, and he didn't get a ton of help from his offensive line. But the moxie that he showed leading a comeback, a 10-point comeback in the fourth quarter, really, I guess 14-point because it was 21-7 to start the fourth, is really confidence-inspiring. And frankly, that's not really something we've seen in a while. I don't think as good as Riley Leonard was for last year's team and as good as Ian Book was, those Notre Dame teams were never really built to come back, and definitely not built to come back for double digits. And you saw a guy that can maybe throw you back into the game a little bit, even though he didn't throw downfield as much as I thought he should have, or maybe we would have liked him to if the offensive line could have helped. But I think you saw a guy that's going to be able to throw Notre Dame into some games back if they are down.
I agree with you. And that actually leads into the first thing that I liked. Notre Dame's second half response was huge. It's not really a surprise. It's what we have come to expect from a Marcus Freeman-led program, but CJ Carr was integral in that. He was the one getting guys ready to go on the sideline. It's kind of crazy that a redshirt freshman who is making his first career start is already being looked to as the leader. But hey, he is the quarterback, and it's not like any of Notre Dame's captains were playing particularly well. So the fact that the team rallied was very encouraging about where this team goes from here. Last year, they played basically the entire season with their backs against the wall, and they're basically going to have to do that for the duration of this season now that they lost the season opener. But it's a good sign that they have that in them. Obviously, you don't want to go down 21-7, but the way the team fought back was impressive, and it was a collective effort. I just mentioned the offense went 3-and-out after Miami went up 2 scores, but then the defense responded by forcing a 3-and-out of their own. The offense answered with an 11-play touchdown drive to cut it to 21-14. And then even when the offense had that bad interception, defense made up for it. They held them to a field goal, and then the offense had 2 long scoring drives that led to a tie game late in the fourth quarter, and they had a real chance to win it. Yes, they got a little bit of aid, I think we should say, from Mario Cristobal and his conservative play calling. But in a situation like that, when it could have gotten ugly, the fact that Notre Dame gave themselves a chance to win late there is huge for this group going forward.
Yeah, it's huge. And, it wasn't really just Mario Cristobal. I will also say, and I don't remember the last time I said this, I think Notre Dame was the beneficiary of some questionable officiating as well. At points, they definitely got some calls in that game, which I'm not accustomed to in that stadium. Maybe they were still trying to get paid back from that god-awful.
Is there one that stands out where you were like, wow, we got bailed out there?
There were a couple of pass interferences that didn't get called on Notre Dame that I certainly thought could have. And then additionally, there was an unnecessary roughness called on Miami when they were on offense, I believe.
No, it was when Jeremiah Love got stuffed and then they drove him back like 10 yards.
Oh, was that what? Okay, well, there was a play when a Miami guy's helmet came off and somehow they got called for unnecessary roughness. Anyways, all that said, that was not what I was expecting that night. But Miami brought the fight all night, and I didn't really feel like Notre Dame did a good job of doing that. But one of the guys that did, I think, bring the fight to Miami was Jordan Faison. And his numbers aren't going to wow you. He only had 5 catches for 33 yards, but I thought he was really scrappy returning punts too, made some guys miss both in the screen game and on punts. And really just nice to see the Fort Lauderdale kid get a touchdown at Hard Rock Stadium. He showed up ready to play, and I didn't feel like a lot of other guys did, at least early on for sure. So that was good to see.
They had him in the game a lot early on, and he was almost forgotten about. I feel like during camp, not entirely, but there was so much focus on the transfers who came in. Malachi Fields, he's going to be the big boundary receiver that Notre Dame needed. Came up with a huge catch in this game despite the fumble. Will Pauling, a transfer slot receiver, is elected captain. Jane Greathouse is a ton of hype going into this season, coming off those 2 impressive performances at the end of last season. So we're talking about those guys a ton, and then Jordan Faison kind of got lost in the shuffle, and then right away, Mike Denbrock reminded you that, hey, he's a really good player, really shifty with the ball in his hands, and they got him the ball a lot early. Not so much in the second half, but I'm with you. Big game by him, and it makes me more confident about him and what he can do for this team going forward this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I would say the receiving performance as a whole was disappointing. I think it gives you some confidence that there's going to be just guys that have nights at times. And I know that sounds crazy at 5 catches for 33 yards, but like there's some optionality within the offense. And we're not that far away from being in a place where Notre Dame was lucky to have 2 starting receivers, basically. So I think that that's just a promising sign to see that early on in the season.
We're going to be right back with Luke in a moment to break down more things we liked from Notre Dame's performance against Miami. But first, a word from Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Mazda offers more than safety. It has won more 2025 IIHS Top Safety Pick Awards than anyone else. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same, from metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather. You can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there is more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. You know who else came through in this one? The kicking game.
It sure did. And I did not expect that.
I did not expect that at all. I was very open about my concern with the kicking game going into this season, but they performed really well in this one. Now, Noah Burnett only had 1 field goal attempt, but man, it was critical because it was late in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame was down 10. If they wanted to have any chance of winning this game, he had to knock in a 39-yarder. And I'm not going to lie, in my head, just with the way that game had been going, I was like, there is no chance this one is going through the uprights, and he buried it. And I think when you make that first field goal, especially that first clutch field goal, that's just going to give him so much more confidence going forward. And now he can build off that. So that's huge for Noah Burnett. But also, we got to give some love to our favorite Aussie punter, James Rundell. 4 nice punts, averaged 45 yards with a long of 55. I didn't really want to come out of this game bragging about the punter, but considering how last season went, it was very inconsistent with him. The fact that he was able to come through, and I don't know if it looked like this in the stadium, but from my vantage point, it looked like he hit the ball a million yards in the air and had good distance. So 1 year into college football, he looks a lot better this time around.
Yeah, the 28-year-old or whoever old he is finally figuring it out. But I agree. Honestly, I had no feel for the field goals in that game in general. Started with that god-awful snap from Miami, and then I am just shocked that some program told me that the FIU transfer was going to be the worst kicker of all time. I'm kidding. That's supposed to be you. But that guy hit 2 big kicks, and I definitely thought he was going to shank at least one of them, if not both, and same with Noah Burnett. He hit one where I'm sitting there thinking, all right, he misses this, it's game over, but he gave Notre Dame a chance. So definitely, I don't know if it's like John Doerr Jr. experience, but he hasn't missed one yet, so I don't want to say that either.
They kept showing it on the broadcast that Davis was like 4 of 11 in his career under 40 yards. And then, of course, he goes out there and he just absolutely buries a 47-yarder for the win. So, look, Notre Dame caught a bunch of bad breaks in this one. I mean, like the C.J. Daniels catch, an unbelievable play that was a really poor decision by Beck. He gets bailed out. And also, like the kicked ball interception and then Carter Davis knocking in the game-winning field goal. Like, you have to give credit to Miami. Obviously, they deserve to win because they made plays like that. But also, if you're Notre Dame, you're walking away from it like, all right, a bunch of things had to go the wrong way, and they still only lost by 3 on the road against a top 10 team.
Yeah, that's true. I did still think, though, that they were outplayed for most of the night. And probably, if we look at it correctly, as much as it pains me to admit this, the right team won based on how they played that night. But then that's confusing because I do think Notre Dame is probably a better team than Miami. And you know what else was confusing? But I did like it. I'm going to call it Jadarian Price's drive because his usage was somewhat puzzling. He didn't get a carry in the second half, but that one drive he did get, he showed some explosion off tackle. Had 6 carries for 45 yards. And that 30-yarder he had, I thought was going to be exactly like his play at A&M last year, where he kind of goes around the sideline and scores, ties the game up. Came up just short. I know he fumbled, and obviously like kind of game situation dictated that there just weren't a ton of carries to go around, but it sort of felt like they were a little bit punitive towards that fumble because he may have came back in for one series, but I was annoyed by that because I felt like that series was the one time it felt like Notre Dame had really found something consistently, and then they didn't go back to it. So that was a little bit puzzling and annoying to me, but I did like what I saw from him on that one drive.
Price was out there for 15 total plays and is Notre Dame's rushing leader after 6 carries in this one. Did you notice when he had that breakaway run where it was like 30 yards, he got caught near the goal line? We noticed this live. I don't know if you could see this in the stands. When he breaks left, it looks like he points up in the air, like he's showboating from the 20-yard line. I don't know if that's what he was doing, but it felt odd. And then he realized that defender on Miami actually had the angle on him, so then he picked up some speed. So it might be a combination of the fumble and perhaps celebrating a little bit too early, and considering Marcus Freeman is a real stickler about guys just handing the ball to the ref after they score. I really don't think he'd like guys celebrating before they even get to the end zone. I'm not even sure that's what he was doing, but it did look a little bit weird and just kind of how that play ended up playing out.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely couldn't see that from Kingdom Come up there. It was the opposite end zone as well. But I also didn't notice that, but I guess I wasn't looking for it when I watched the highlights back.
It was subtle. It wasn't like he wasn't like pointing at the defender, or else a lot more people would be talking about it.
Yeah, well, kind of sounds on brand for everything else that happened that night. So maybe it did.
Before we shift over to the things we did not like, I did want to give a shout out to two guys in particular, Ashton Craig and Boubacar Traore. Their first games back from injury. Ashton Craig suffered a season-ending injury against Purdue of last year, and then Boubacar suffered his season-ending knee injury against Louisville. And I did not know what to expect from either one of these guys going into the season. Felt pretty confident that they were going to play early on, but after what we experienced with Mitchell Evans last year and how long it took for him to ramp up and be himself, I thought maybe like Traore could be on a bit of a pitch count, but that was not the case at all. Both of these guys stepped up their game, and for as much as the offensive line struggled in this game, Ashton Craig was stout up the middle, made some nice blocks as a puller as well. He is an athlete at center, and they really missed that during his absence last year. Like, they weren't pulling Pat Coogan very often, so he brings a new dynamic to the offensive line. He allowed one pressure, but he had the best PFF grade of any offensive lineman by far. Now, not necessarily a super high bar when Anthony Knapp is getting a 10.5, but it backed up the eye test. I thought he played well, and Boubacar was not on any sort of a pitch count. He played 46 snaps, registered 6 total tackles, that was third on the team, and had the only sack of the game for Notre Dame. He also had that big run stuff on 3rd and short when that defense desperately needed it. So for all the bad things that happen on the offensive and defensive lines, it's good that the two guys coming back from injury really elevated their play.
Yeah, I agree. No doubt. It's funny. I saw like somebody saying in the comments, I think it was a PFF like pass grade tweet, saying like, we should have kept Pat Coogan. He was the heart of the offensive line. It's like, well, his replacement actually was the best lineman out there. So I don't think that's the problem. But Boubacar, you're right, was great. He was really, I thought Patello had a couple plays where he looked all right too, especially I didn't really expect much of him. And then I know people like Jared Dawson, which is interesting because I definitely didn't see that from Kingdom Come Up Live. I thought like there were some plays that he wasn't making, but
dude, were you on the roof? Like, were you with the banners?
It's I think I was way off. Like, for example, when what's his name went in when Knapp got hurt, and this is actually the point. What is that guy? Styles Prescott.
Yeah,
I kept calling him Elijah Page, who was on USC. So that's where I was at.
Was there a point during the game when you're squinting on the field or squinting towards the field just to see who's even out there? Like, maybe I could have just watched this one in the comfort of my own home with the television.
Oh, believe me, there was more than one point. But you know what? You don't get the glory without the gore or something like that. So that's what we're going with. But anyways, back to your point. Agreed. I thought Ashton Craig and Boubacar definitely showed up, and they were two of the only bright pieces on the trenches.
All right, we've covered the good. Let's get to the bad. A lot to choose from. Unfortunately, what stood out the most to you?
So I think the overarching theme here is there seemed to be a lack of preparation, or maybe not lack of preparation, but it bled into passive play. And this felt to me like the first time a Marcus Freeman-led team didn't really seem to be ready in a big spot. And I can point to a bunch of different things. I thought the whole operation seemed lackadaisical and without emotion all night. They didn't play with their hair on fire like we've become accustomed them to. Like, even on Micah Gilbert's touchdown after CJ Carr makes this sort of stupid, sort of sensational play to avoid a sack and throw a touchdown. You watch those highlights, it feels like they're barely celebrating. Like, there's barely any emotion showed. It's just kind of like, oh, we scored. And I would chalk that lack of emotion up to Adon Schuler not taking CJ Daniels' head off on that duck that Carson Beck threw up there too. So the no pressure all night, like Notre Dame had their least amount of pressures in a game since the Navy game in 2017. And in that game, Navy only dropped back to pass 9 times. Like, it was a really lackadaisical effort, and they still only lost by 3 points, which makes this a little bit more frustrating. And I think even in the post game, like, Freeman seems kind of even keeled. And I know we're talking about how we're saying, there's definitely some good to take out of this, but you almost would have liked to see a little bit more emotion, because it kind of feels like a game that Notre Dame should have been more ready for. And they are a better team, but they certainly weren't that night. And so that's just something that bothers me a little bit, to be honest.
I agree with you. And for as calm as we are relative to how we've handled past losses, I sure as hell hope the team does not feel that same way. I hope they feel embarrassed, pissed off, whatever sort of emotion they need to feel in order to bounce back in a big way and dominate Texas A&M, because I think we as fans can look at the rest of the schedule and say, all right, one loss doesn't end the season. But if you're a player and you get pushed around by Miami, and I know they were talking a lot of trash during that game, like that should light a fire under you. And that actually leads me to the first thing that I didn't like. It kind of plays right off that it's a little bit more focused though. So I did not like the emphasis on getting pressure with 4. Marcus Freeman mentioned it going into the half, and then he spoke about it again in the postgame. And obviously, every football coach who has ever coached a single down of football wants to be able to get pressure with 4 guys. That is one of the basic components of a great defense. But this is what Marcus Freeman had to say. Quote, "We've got to be better with our 4-man rushes. If we need to blitz 5, we will, but you're not going to be really successful on defense if you can't get pressure on the quarterback with 4-man rushes," end quote. Okay, fair. But Notre Dame was not able to get pressure with 4 at any point in this game. And yet they didn't try to bring more. As a matter of fact, they did the exact opposite. So Notre Dame sent more than 4 rushers on 7 of Beck's first 13 dropbacks. That did not account for much. But then they sent more than 4 guys just 3 times on the next 19 dropbacks. They became more passive when they already weren't generating any pressure, and it just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree, because I know you said that they didn't get a ton of pressure when they did send more than 4 early on, but I felt like when they finally got to Beck, you saw him make some terrible decisions or got sacked. Like they really needed to be bringing it more often, and we know how he stacks up statistically when he's under pressure. So I know that Malachi Toney, that guy had a really nice game the other night. He made some nice plays, but I didn't feel like the other receivers were burning Notre Dame's defensive backs really at all. And I think they were in a position where they could have brought more pressure. And especially if I don't know, like you've got some really explosive linebackers like Kingston Viliamuasa and Jalen Sneed. You got to use them more like that. And it's, as it apparently turns out, this nickel we brought in can't cover anybody. So why not send him on a blitz if all he can do is hit? I don't know. That's just stuff that's kind of going through my head. These guys are paid a lot of money to sort all this stuff out, but it sort of felt like they just thought, we're the better team. We don't need to necessarily out scheme these guys. We're just going to out physical them. And that's not what happened.
Luke and I still have a lot more to get to, including the rest of the things we didn't like from the game and a quick look ahead to Texas A&M. But first, I want to tell you about a great new promotion courtesy of our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure that you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. All right, here's my pick. NFL kicks off tomorrow night. Got a doubleheader. I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs to cover -3 against the LA Chargers. It's on the road. It's going to be a tough environment. The Chiefs are coming off an embarrassing loss in the Super Bowl, but if you've been watching and listening to the show, you know that I am very high on the Chiefs going into 2025. I think they're going to start the year off right with a big win on the road over the Chargers, and they're going to cover that 3-point spread. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those alone saved me money every month. Monarch also makes it simple to review your finances with your partner. You can both see budgets, goals, and spending activity in one place. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Right, and maybe I'm just being a prisoner of the moment here, but I never recall Al Golden stressing that they only needed to get pressure with 4. I mean, Golden would bring 5, 6, hell, maybe even 7 to try and rattle the quarterback, and sometimes they would present a defense where it looked like they were going to send 6, but then they would send 4, and then the quarterback would be so confused that they were actually able to generate pressure with 4 guys. I think maybe they were just too confident in their defensive line going into this one, thinking that guys like Bryce Young, Boubacar Traore, Jordan Botelho, who somehow was able to play in this game like 2 months removed from a torn pec injury, maybe they were just too confident in their defensive line, whereas like last year, after Notre Dame lost Botelho, they lost Traore, they were working with a makeshift defensive line. Al Golden knew that he had to get really exotic with the pressure. So I don't really know the reason why they didn't do it more, but I hope that changes against Texas A&M because it wasn't working, and Texas A&M has a good offensive line too.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of early on in Freeman's tenure as the defensive coordinator. Do you remember the 3-man front nonsense that they used to do where they would just like have basically Isaiah Foskey line up at nose tackle and they wouldn't get any pressure? That's sort of what it reminded me of. So we'll see. I don't think they're that stubborn. I do think they'll adapt. And also, like, I don't think they're going to play an offensive line as good as Miami's. I know Texas A&M is a solid offensive line, but I think they'll have some more success off ability. But you would like to see a little bit more creativity and also just build into the attitude that had you so much success the last 2 years, which was being aggressive. So,
yeah, I think just a really disappointing performance for Notre Dame on both lines of scrimmage. It got better as the game went on, but when you consider the way that we perceive this group going into the season, obviously they did not live up to our expectations whatsoever.
Yeah, you know who else didn't? The offensive line, because they are definitely behind schedule. And maybe this is our own fault for having misguided expectations. You know, in fairness, Anthony Knapp coming off an injury that ended his season a game early last year. You don't have Charles Jag, you saw. You do have Gerby Lambert, but he's coming off a spring injury as well. But I did not expect that group to get dominated like they did Sunday night. And maybe dominated is a little bit harsh because I do think if you take sacks out, I think they outrushed Miami. Like on the ground,
they did.
It actually wasn't horrible at times, and they averaged more yards per carry.
Yeah, Miami had more total yards, but Notre Dame had more yards per carry.
Right. And I don't want to hear about the heat, which I know some people were saying, oh, well, they had to be cramping because that was not a problem in College Station a year ago. And I was at both games. Obviously, I wasn't wearing pads. It was hotter and more humid in College Station than it was in Miami. Like, I just don't think it was really close, honestly. But I think this bleeds into the first thing I didn't like because Notre Dame just not being tough enough. It doesn't seem to match up with what's been their identity under Marcus Freeman. And their inability to hold up in pass pro really put them in bad spots. And I think that's probably why you saw Mike Denbrock call so many screens, because at the end of the game and drop back sets, it was just jailbreak. I mean, some of the worst pass sets I've ever seen. And granted, Styles Prescott / Elijah Page being in the game at the end was not what you expected either. But wow, it was just not a showing we're accustomed to seeing.
Wait, you might have just told on yourself because the humidity may have gotten to you if you thought that Elijah Page was the left tackle who decommitted to Notre Dame and ended up at their arch rival USC. So maybe you were seeing stuff out there.
You know what's crazy is that I put that in like 3 different threads. Like, did Knapp get hurt? Why is Elijah Page out there? And nobody corrected me to say, who are you talking about? So I don't know. But yeah, you're right. Again, I couldn't see up there. But I did not think it was that hot, but you know, whatever. I'm not actually wearing pads out there. And that's not really the point of this. But regardless, I didn't think they were tough enough, and that's not what their identity has been.
Emil Wagner might have been seeing Elijah Page or a monster coming at him at different points during the end of that game. Like, he's been getting smoked on Twitter to the point where I almost feel bad for him. Yeah, he was going up against Ruben Bain, who's probably going to be a first-round draft pick, but the lowlights coming out of this game for multiple players in the Notre Dame offensive line are just rough.
Yeah, they're not going to want to see those. And Miami, meanwhile, this might be their Super Bowl because some of the stuff you've seen from them on social media afterwards is just kind of pathetic, honestly. That goes for you, Ruben Bain. But yeah, it was a rough night for that group.
Quickly, coming off of that, I already mentioned it before on the show, but the lack of Jane Greathouse and Will Pauling is even more puzzling when you consider the fact that Notre Dame probably knew they were going to get beat on the offensive line, and the quick game was such a big priority. It just makes zero sense to me how Greathouse and Will Pauling were absent from the game plan. Greathouse was out there for 39 plays. He had 2 targets, 0 catches. Will Pauling was out there for 21 plays, just doing some cardio, Tony Snell-esque. If the plan is to throw quick passes to get your quarterback in rhythm, maybe get the ball to your slot receivers who are very good in the quick game, especially Will Pauling, who was just elected captain, who had under 10 yards per reception at Wisconsin because he was so good in the quick game. Everything he did was all short passes, get the ball, move the chains, and he was not a factor at all. I don't expect that to be the case against Texas A&M, but if the offensive line is struggling, you have 2 guys who are very capable of moving the sticks with short passes, and they just were completely absent.
Yeah, except when Will Pauling was in there trying to block.
And borderline 3-point stance in goal line set.
I don't know what's going on with the tight end room, too. Eli Raridan had a really rough night as well. I know he had the one big play on the busted play, but boy, that's not what Will Pauling should be getting used for.
Nope, not at all. All right, we're going a little bit long, so we got one more thing each that we don't like. We'll do a quick look ahead to Texas A&M. What's last on your list?
So the last one for me is pretty simple, honestly, and it's the fact that we now have to hear about Miami being back and Carson Beck loving football again, and the fact that Miami fans can gloat about quote unquote shutting down Jeremiah Love. This type of stuff just shouldn't happen against our program after what Notre Dame's been through. I really thought they were past this, and yeah, it's not a big deal to lose a game on the road against a top 10 team, but I just think they're better. And it's really more infuriating because, like I said earlier, when they brought pressure from the backers, I thought Beck looked like Beck from last year, and they didn't make his life nearly hard enough. And now we have to hear some sad story about how hard his life was at Georgia and how hard it's been for him coming to Miami and getting dumped and all this stuff. Enough. I'm sick of it. And the other thing is, like, I don't think Miami shut down Jeremiah Love. Mike Denbrock did. Yeah, he had 33 yards, but 30 of those were after contact. And I would contend that if they had continued to feed him the ball, I think he would have even just kept breaking tackles and running through him. So I'm just kind of annoyed with the narratives that come out of this. Nothing you can do to control them. Obviously, congrats to Miami fans on this win. I'm sure you'll still lose some games in terrible fashion like you always do. But that just bothers me. And that's my irrational fandom come through.
Yeah, I did not think a lot of people outside of the Miami fan base were giving Carson Beck a ton of sympathy. It's like, yeah, man, you had a rough injury. You were able to come back from it. You missed the end of the season last year. That's unfortunate. You also got paid $4 million to be the quarterback of Miami. I think he's going to be all right going forward. But the best way to eliminate all of that is to just win on the football field. And that leads me to the last thing that I don't like. Notre Dame has no opportunity to beat someone on the field this weekend because they have a bye in week 2. And I'm kind of split on whether this team would be better off playing some terrible team this weekend, just pulverize them, build some confidence, instill some confidence in some guys who probably don't have a ton right now. Or maybe they are better off not playing a game and just spending the next 2 weeks thinking about the loss of Miami. I guess we will never know, really. It's all hypothetical, but I could say as a fan, I really wish we could just have another game to look forward to, cleanse the palate a little bit, and start to put this game behind us because it's not really going away anytime soon, and that is unfortunate.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. It's really frustrating that there isn't a game. And the other thing is, like, if we're going to continue to do this massive opener thing, at least get somebody to come to you every once in a while. It's
they
just
used
so
to. Like, yeah, Michigan, Texas, it used to happen. I don't know why it stopped.
I know. It's admirable that they're playing big games to start the year, but you just put yourself so far behind the 8 ball when you play these games on the road and you don't win them. And it's a big ask to win all these. So I just think, Pete, as you get more into this job, let's try to get some home games. And I don't know like how far out this thing even, I don't like 2027, maybe there is one. I have no idea. But next year, obviously, is neutral site, a little bit different. But I'd like some home games to start the year. And frankly, no more openers in Miami. Let's just make that a basic rule.
All right, real quick before we head out, how are you feeling about Texas A&M?
I think it's going to be a tough game. I hope they come through, but that team's definitely going to be fired up coming to South Bend after losing to Notre Dame last year. And it's going to be a dogfight. There's no doubt about that. I think we'll come out on top, but man, it's a big one, and there's not a lot of room for error.
It is probably not going to be the most fun 3.5 hours, but that is going to do it for us today. Luke, appreciate you coming on. We are going to run it back after the Texas A&M game, after the 3.5 miserable hours that we're probably going to endure inside Notre Dame Stadium at least. And, hopefully we'll be in a much better mood when we do this the next time around.
Absolutely. And, where thing comes to worst, at least we're both in South Bend. What a place where else would you rather be?
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging with us and for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you've been enjoying the show, please like the video, subscribe on YouTube, follow the podcast, and leave a 5-star rating and review. It really helps us grow. By the way, I'm going to be doing another Friday mailbag at the end of this week, even though it's a bye week. So be sure to drop your questions in the YouTube comments or hit me up on social media at Locked On Irish on X or at Locked On Irish Pod on Instagram. And before you go, I wanted to let you know about a new show here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. I'm going to be back here right here tomorrow morning with another new episode and a special guest, so make sure you tune into that. I'll see you then.